Warning, this video is just reading, and so will the next few videos. The book we will be reading is the Five Nights at Freddy's The Silver Eyes book. Hope you enjoy. Subscribe for more, it really helps. Hashtag Scott Coffin is the best. Let's begin. I will only be reading for 14 minutes at a time. Love you all. Peace. Boop. Chapter 1. He sees me. Charlie dropped to her hands and knees. She was wedged between a row of arcade games, cramped in the crawl space between the consoles and the wall. Tangled electronical cords and useless plugs strewn beneath her. She was cornered. The only way out was past the thing, and she wasn't fast enough to make it. She could see him, stalking back and forth, catching flickers of movement through the gaps between the games. There was scarcely enough room to move, but she tried to crawl backwards, her foot caught on a cord. She stopped, confronting herself to carefully dislodge it. She heard the clash of metal on metal, and the furthest console rocked back against the wall and hit it again, shattering the display, then attacked the next, crashing against it almost rhythmically, tearing through the machinery, coming closer. I have to get out. I have to. The panicked thought was of no help. There was no way out. Her arm ached, and she wanted to sob out loud. Blood soaked through the tattered bandage, and it seemed as though she could feel it draining out of her. The console a few feet away crashed against the wall, and Charlie flinched. He was getting closer. She could hear the grinding of gears and the clicking of servos, even louder. Eyes closed, she could still see the way he looked at her, see the matted fur and the exposed metal beneath the synthetic flesh. Suddenly, the console in front of her wrenched away. It toppled over, thrown down like a toy. The power cords beneath her hands and knees were yanked away, and Charlie slipped, almost falling. She caught herself and looked up just in time to see the downward swing of a hook. Welcome to Hurricane. Ugh. Charlie smiled wearily at the sign and kept driving. The world didn't look any different from the side of the sign to the other, but she felt nervous anticipation as she passed it. She didn't recognise anything. Then again, she hadn't really expected to. Not this far at the edge of town, where it was all highway and empty space. She wondered what the others would look like, who they were now. 10 years ago, they'd been best friends, and it had happened, and everything ended, at least for Charlie. She hadn't seen any of them since she was 7 years old. They'd written all the time as kids, especially Marla, who wrote like she had talked, fast and incoherent. But as they got older, they had grown apart, the letters had grown fewer, and further between. And the conversations leading up to this trip had been punctuatory and few and full of awkward pauses. Charlie repeated their names as though to reassure herself that she did still remember them. Marla, Jessica, Lamar, Carlton, John, and Michael. Michael was the reason for this trip, after all. It was 10 years since he died, 10 years since it happened, and now his parents wanted them all together for the dedication ceremony. They wanted all his old friends there. When they announced the scholarship they were creating in his name, Charlie knew it was a good thing to do, but the gathering still felt slightly macabre. She shivered and turned down the air conditioning, even though she knew it was not the cold. As she drove into the town centre, Charlie began to recognise things. A few stores and a movie theatre, which was now advertising the summer's hot blockbuster hit. She felt a brief moment of surprise, then smiled at herself. What do you expect? That the whole place would be unchanged? A moment to your moment of your departure? Frozen forever in July 1985? Well, that was exactly what she had expected. She looked at her watch. Still a few hours to kill before they all met up. She thought about going to the movie, but she knew that she really wanted to. Charlie made a left turn and headed out of town. 10 minutes later, she pulled to a stop and got out. The house loomed up before her, its dark outline a wound in the bright blue sky. Charlie leaned back against the car, slightly dizzy. She took a moment to steady herself with a deep breath. She had known it would be here. And a look through her aunt's bank books a few years before had told her that the mortgage had paid off and that Aunt Jen was still paying property taxes. It had only been 10 years and there was no reason it should have changed at all. Charlie climbed the steps slowly, taking in the peeling paint. The first stair still had a loose board, and the rose bushes had taken over one side of the porch, their thorns biting hungrily into the wood. The door was locked, but Charlie still had her key. She had never actually used it. Sorry guys, as she took it around from her neck and slid it into a lock, she remembered her father putting its chain around her neck. In case you ever need it. Well, she needed it now. The door opened easily, and Charlie looked around. She didn't remember much about the first couple of years here. She had only been 3 years old. All the memories had faded together in the blur of child grief and loss, of not understanding why her mother had to go away, clinging to her father every moment, not trusting the world around her unless he was there, unless she had held tightly to him. burying herself in his flannel shirts, and the smell of grease and hot metal on him. The stairs screeched straight up to the front of her, but she did not move directly to them. Instead, she went into the living room, where all the furniture was still in place. She had not really noticed it as a child, and the house was a little too large for the furniture they had. Though she had not really noticed it as a child, but the house was a little too large for the furniture they had again. Things were spread out too widely in order to fill the space. The coffee table was too far away from the couch to reach. The easy chair was too far across from the room to carry on a conversation. There was a dark stain in the wooden floorboards near the centre of the room. Charlie stepped around it quickly and went to the kitchen. There, cupboards held only a few pots, pans and dishes. Charlie had never felt a lack of anything as a child, but it seemed now that the unnecessary enormity of the house was a sort of apology. The attempt of a man who had lost so much to give his daughter what he could. He'd always had a way of overdoing what he did. The last time she was there, the house had been dark and everything felt wrong. She was carried up the stairs to a bedroom. Although she was 7 years old and could have gone quicker on her own 2 feet. But Aunt Jen had stopped on the front porch, picked her up and carried her, shielding her face as though she was a baby in a glaring sun. In her room, Aunt Jen set Charlie down and locked the bedroom door behind them. She told her to pack her suitcase, and Charlie had cried because all of her things could never fit into that small case. In her room, Aunt Jen... Oh, sorry guys. We can come back for the rest later, Aunt Jen said, her impatience leaking through as Charlie hovered intensely at her dresser, trying to decide which t-shirts to bring along. They had never come back for the rest. Charlie mounted the stairs, heading to her old room. The door was open, and as she opened it, she had a giddy feeling of displacement, as though her young self might be sitting there among the toys, might look up at her and ask Charlie, "Who are you?" Charlie went in. Like the rest of the house, her bedroom was untouched. The walls were pale pink, and the ceiling, which sloped dramatically on one side to follow the line of the roof, was painted to match. Her old bed still stood against the wall beneath a large window. The mattress was still intact, though the sheets were gone.